TNC fam, hello and welcome. I come to you with an important and exciting announcement for the future of this podcast. I think it's going to create a new tradition, and it's going to be something the fans of this pod can really get behind. After long discussions with ESPN and considerations of the commercial incentives on offer, we've decided to sell the podcast to Bristol, Connecticut for the next 3 years, to be hosted by Stephen A. Smith and Jalen Rose. And we think it's just going to be, it's going to skyrocket this pod to a new level. So after today, it's thanks and success, I'm afraid. Our last show, Josh Parrish, Nick Stoll and Joey Lynch with you for the TNC farewell. Nick, how are you?
Look, pretty relaxed. Just had a nice chill day on the harbour in this beautiful city. What a time it is to be in Sydney. What a great city it is. I don't know why anyone would get, upset about Sydney, but it's been a wonderful time to be here in Sydney. I'm glad to talk to you guys about football, whatever's going on. Not sure. Haven't checked the headlines lately.
You turned off Twitter, just haven't checked in a couple of days, just breezed in off the back. So we just have a nice calm chat about the A-League games so we can get out of here in an hour, right? Yeah.
Look, it's all gone. Like the Socceroo, we're still riding that Socceroo's wave, aren't we? Like is that wave, we're still riding that, right? We're still just surfing that in. It's all fun. It's all good. World Cup's not even over.
How about you, Joe? Are you still riding the wave of positive vibes?
Oh, man, first, don't threaten me with a good time by saying that Stephen A. Smith could host this pod. How amazing would it be if Stephen A. Smith was just hosting this podcast and talking about soccer? That would be amazing.
He really would be the best host. That would end the debate, I think.
Yeah. I'm struggling I was thinking about this on the drive home. The game against Argentina, Garang Kuol almost taking Argentina to extra time was 8 days ago. It feels like several hundred years since that has happened. I don't know, up is down.
Has he started a game in those several hundred years, or is he still the super sub?
It feels like, up is down, left is right. Melbourne Victory fans are praising Western United statements like dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. I don't know what's happening. I want to go to bed.
Well, that's a familiar feeling on this podcast. It usually comes at the 2-hour mark, not the 30-minute mark. But yes, the A-League Grand Final, stop beating around the bush, has been sold to Sydney.
What?
Destination New South Wales has decided to fork out an 8-figure sum over 3 years to buy the rights to the Grand Final. Stoll, as our chief Sydney propagandist, you must be delighted.
Absolutely. I mean, who doesn't want to come to Sydney? Look, here's what I'll say is, wow, what a hydrogen bomb that was dropped on the league this week. Look, I'll be honest with you. When I first read the news, I was like, it's not going to go down well. It's a bit of a weird decision to make. Kind of went on thinking it'll be criticized a bit and everyone will get over it. But, oh my goodness, to define a shitstorm, this is the absolute worst diarrhea in the, hurricane tornado. It was crazy. Literally, I will be honest, yesterday, I was just I was going on a ferry across Sydney Harbour. It was beautiful. I tweeted out a nice photo of it. The amount of people who are like, oh my God, is Danny Townsend paying you to spruik Sydney? Guys, come on. It's an international city which has millions of tourists a year. It's okay. It doesn't need my help. Just incredible. It's been an absolutely batshit 48 hours in Australian football. Australian football does have some batshit 48 hours in it. But to try and describe this to someone who isn't in this world, as I had to do to Max Rushton yesterday, it does sound amazing. It is incredible kind of what has transpired. I don't think anyone involved thought that this would happen. Obviously, there was talk of that they'd kind of planned for a backlash, but I don't think anyone expected a backlash this big. And in a way, it's exciting. Like, I gotta be honest with you. Like, maybe I've become so detached from all that is happening in
Stoll,
Australia.
you are that little girl standing in front of the burning house meme. That is you. If there was anything to summarize your character, it is that. You are the guy that just wants to watch the world burn.
I've got to tell you something. I love a supporters group statement. If I was running a supporters group, oh my goodness, the statements that we'd be running out every couple of days. A new official statement. It's amazing, all these statements. And, the TNC fan group decree that this will go on. The power that you'd feel. It's incredible. Look, here's what I'll say is I'll start with the positives. Right? I actually think well done to the fans for speaking out the way they did. I think it's actually been really cool. I like that fans have, like the talk of the Melbourne Derby fans, because look, regardless of the decision point, I was just saying this on and off air. At a certain point, it doesn't matter whether a decision's right or wrong. For the record, I don't think it was a good decision. I like the grand final being hosted in, the winning city. I understand that logistically that can be difficult to plan for the APL, but I like that. And all the great memories we've had and blah, blah. And everyone's explained that, how great the grand final was in Adelaide, how great the grand final was in Melbourne, how great the grand final was in Brisbane, Newcastle, so on and so forth. That's great. But it doesn't matter how good or bad a decision is. Like, as I was saying, if the league said, we're going to bring in Yesta, I love that idea, right? We're going to bring the league. But for whatever reason, every fan group in the country said, we don't want Iniesta to come. They released a statement. We're going to walk out if you bring Iniesta. Okay, don't bring Iniesta. Like, at a certain point, you've just got to say, look, we all thought it was a good idea. We wanted him to come. We don't know why you're so angry. Clearly you are. We've decided, because, at the end of the day, why are we doing this is to get the fans in, to get them watching, blah, blah, get them paying money. So well done to the fans. Well done to Robbie Cornthwaite. I think for speaking out, which would have been a kind of awkward position. Well done to Keep Up for running that article, which, I was surprised and glad to see that article ran. Potentially well done to DiPietro for resigning over it. Although I kind of don't understand. It seems like every club is distancing themselves from this decision, yet somehow every club might have also voted for that. Joey, you probably can explain that a little bit better for us. But I'm actually just gobsmacked at kind of what has transpired. And look, I gotta say, surely this decision is going to be reversed. Like, I can't remember a time when it was so unanimous. Like, players have come out, teams have come out, fans have come out. The New South Wales government's got to start. They got to come with more money. They're going to be like, oh, fine, a billion. Like, I think it's only like 10, 15 million or whatever it is for 3 years. Look, they've got to see all this and be like, all right, we'll give you 150 million. And then it's like, okay, all right, let's do it.
I wonder what the price is. I wonder what the price is for everyone to say, all right, okay.
Are we sure this isn't a Peter V'landys plot? Like, he's got significant connections in the New South Wales government. This is like 4D chess. Like, he's gone to his people in New South. Like, listen, I've got an idea. Like, you offer the APL 12 mil, they'll do this. It's going to blow up. And then we'll stake all the rectangular stadiums.
That would imply that Peter V'landys has his finger on the pulse in terms of A-League fan bases. And maybe, look, I like this even further. Maybe he's behind all these statements. A lot of these statements don't have an author. Maybe he's drafting them and sending them to the fan groups. And they're like, yep, thanks, Peter. Good
TNC's job. Broken the story. It's Peter V'landys is doing.
Peter V'landys. Look, first of all, I'll say Sydney's a good city. So everyone just shitting on Sydney can just relax a little bit. All right, that's the first thing. But, wow. I do feel, like, on a serious point, like, I don't think it's a good decision, and I think everyone's explained why. But I do think this is much more straw that broke the camel's back. Like, I did find it interesting that this was the thing that got everyone. But I think at a certain point, it's been too many, false dawns and too many issues around so many things. And I think two things have happened. I think eventually, so much water rises, the levee's going to break. And also, I think fans got a sense of their power recently when it came to the fan zones. And I think they're riding a wave. And I think it's good, by the way. Like, you know, me and Vince have joked about on Twitter about setting up like an Australian football political party.
Is this Australian football's class consciousness moment?
Man,
I would love it.
Is Conrad Halloran behind all these statements?
No, well, on the political party, I can't believe Vince is practicing his Twitter material on me in Doha and then getting back and tweeting it out. That is ridiculous.
Can you give us an example?
No, the Australian soccer party was a conversation we had in Doha. Then he gets back and tweets it. I am the beta tester. I am the beta tester for that billionaire's Twitter threads. I am the unpaid intern to that billionaire.
But Joey, do you not notice that we've already talked about having a political party, whether it was Josh campaigning across the country, or whether it was my shooters and dribblers party that could be a minor party in the New South Wales Senate. Let's set up a political party. Why not? Let's get, there's not enough government help. It can be a single issue thing. I think we do it.
All right, Stoll, we've had a vibe check. I think we sorely need some hard journalism here. So, Joey, first of all, are you surprised with the decision, and are you surprised by the reaction?
Reflecting on the decision, I think I was both surprised and not surprised. And I'll elaborate on that. When it came out,
I'm surprised.
Yes. When it came through, I was surprised that they'd done this because obviously it came out of nowhere. Despite apparently it's been in the works for 12 months, New South Wales, but there hadn't been any, concrete talk that anything like this was imminent, especially given that Danny Townsend has come out and said that they did consultation with a whole bunch of stakeholders, particularly fans. Normally, fan groups have more leaks than an Iraqi submarine. So the fact that this didn't get out there beforehand was remarkable. So I was surprised in that. But then the initial shock wears off and you think about it. And I wasn't surprised that a move like this happens because it's keeping in line with sort of the general direction that the A-Leagues have taken over the course of this journey. The A-Leagues I wrote about this from a footballing perspective only in an article today, but the A-Leagues have always been this constant juggling act or this constant conflict, if you will, between commercialization, profit-making, sourcing investment, and all of the things that go towards that, and the actual football. There has always been these constant things
since day one. There's
no
not
promotion.
Just a Danny Townsend thing or an APL thing. That is a day one inception thing.
Because there's no promotion or relegation because you need to provide we are told you need to provide a financial environment in which people are willing to invest. There's a salary cap to protect owners' investments, and supposedly these very smart businessmen need a salary cap to keep them to a budget. And now this move, there's a reported 8-figure sum for a 3-year deal. If you were to tell me the A-Leagues is going to sell the grand final because they can get an 8-figure sum over 3 years. If you told me that, of course I wouldn't have been surprised. Would anybody have been surprised? No. So in the long run, from a broader perspective, I wasn't surprised.
Were you surprised at the backlash? Honestly, because here's the thing.
I wasn't surprised that there was backlash. I've certainly been taken by the scale of it. I think everybody has been taken aback by the significant scale of the backlash. What has been remarkable throughout this entire thing is that the fan backlash has sort of taken on a life of its own. There hasn't really been this hasn't been a media driven thing. This hasn't been either soccer media. When I say soccer, I'm speaking SOKKAH. It hasn't been a soccer media thing or even an external media thing attacking the APL's decision and, Big Bad trying to suppress football, yada, yada, yada. It hasn't been driven by stakeholder groups. It hasn't been driven by whisker campaigns. this thing basically, the bull has basically been unleashed, and the bull is the fans, and everybody else is just trying to hold on for dear life and see where it goes next. That's one of the things that has really taken me throughout this entire thing, that it's just become its own thing. The fans are keeping on going and have kept going, and it's just been so universal. Normally, you put 5 football fans in a room and you get 7 different opinions.
Yeah.
Everyone is united on this. It's remarkable. It's bizarre. I've never seen anything like it.
Look, a week ago, people were saying, if only we could unite the game, the power that would be unleashed. And be careful what you wish for, because wow, this has been mental. Josh, what's your kind of take been on this whole thing?
I mean, I'm kind of disappointed, but not surprised, to be honest. As Geraldo says, this is what you get when you go with franchise soccer. And so much of the decision-making of the APL since independence has been pretty short-sighted and pretty profit-driven and driven to defend the position of the owners and not for the fans, however much they try and spin it that way. And honestly, the thing that makes me most angry about this is not the fact that the grand final is going to be in Sydney. It's the way the fans were told and the messaging behind it as we're going to create a new tradition. And this isn't about the money. Of course it's about the money. Of course it's about the money. It's okay to admit that. Everybody knows that football doesn't make enough money, and that's one of the key problems in the game is we're constantly strapped for cash. Maybe we shouldn't be, given we just sold a fair chunk of the league to Silver Lake, but it's a constant dilemma for the code in this country. And if there was a little bit of honesty in the communications, and Danny Townsend had come out and said, look, we've got to do this because the offer is too good to turn down. Here's what we're putting the money towards. We're, bringing back the Y League, for example. We're doing something good with it. Then I think people would understand. People would be angry still, but they would understand the rationale behind it. This is the money. This is what it's going towards. This is how it's going to tangibly improve the league and the sport as a whole. And, in the meantime, we're going to try and make this event as successful as possible and bring as many fans to Sydney, do discount airfares, whatever, support the fans that are going to travel for it. Then I think there would have been a degree of understanding and sympathy. But instead you get this corporate doublespeak all the time. And it just makes you so angry. It really does. And I can't stand the way in which this has been presented as, this is good for you, actually, and you're being emotional right now, but once you step back and in the fullness of time, you'll see the logic of the decision, and actually you'll be thanking me for this because this is good for you. You're going to eat your vegetables and you're going to enjoy it, And that is so patronizing. It is so insulting to the fans who have so few traditions in this country. In this league is not very old. I mean, we're told the game is only 18 years old. It has a much longer history than that, actually. Even the clubs playing in it are older than that. Perth Glory are 27 years old. But
as someone
few
pointed out,
to hang on to, and our league is so fragile that having the grand final go to the highest ranked team is one of the few traditions that has actually continued through, the jump from the NSL to the A-League. We've got to hang on to that.
Someone pointed out, it's interesting, the 18-year comment, especially because Danny Townsend himself scored in an NSL grand final back in 1999.
He scored in an NSL grand final that South Melbourne won the right to host.
This is this weird, bizarre, it did feel like an episode of Utopia. Anyone who's seen that show, it just, the whole way this whole thing just unraveled was just kind of you did kind of constantly feel like you were just going no. Surely not. Oh my God. Oh, wow. Okay.
It is difficult to think how short of Paul Lederer shooting a puppy underneath the Sydney Harbour Bridge, it's difficult to think about how this rollout could have gone any worse. I mean, within hours yesterday, Tony Sage, as Tony Sage is wont to do, was shooting from the hip on his Facebook account and talking to WA media and against it.
Why does he do that? Why does he just comment on Facebook posts? You're an owner of a club, Tony. Like,
with his James Bond avatar as well. I love that James Bond avatar. But
no,
then
I
you
love
had
it.
also...
I think Tony Sage needs to keep commenting on Facebook posts because it's the only honest communication we get from the APL.
But I mean, and then
he's the owner saying things he shouldn't.
But then you had like Chris Fong emailing fans, distancing himself from the decision, despite the fact that he's one of the 5 club representatives on the APL board. Yeah. Then you have
Jamie McLaren's DMs.
Then you have Craig Goodwin and Remy Seamston disavowing the move after featuring, one can only assume based upon the context of their statements, they weren't aware of what they were talking about and the move. They came out and disavowed it. I understand that
tonight on Rock Bottom.
I understand that, but like that move itself, like World Cup hero Craig Goodwin coming out and slamming the move, that torpedoes so much of this comms plan more than anything anybody else can say. Like when the player is coming out and saying it's remarkable. I mean, I understand that Jamie McLaren was asked to be in a video spruiking the move and declined. So like, there's like a lot
How's
of feeling in this.
By the way, he's a bit ill today.
I think he genuinely is. I think he genuinely is a bit.
Yeah, like your voice on an episode a long time ago.
That literally everybody in Qatar, I feel like picked up a bit of it. I think it's the aircon in Qatar. You go outside, it's normal. You go into a building, it's freezing, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Aircon blasting 24 hours a day. It does things to you, man. But I think another reason, Josh, you touched
the sports washing.
I'll get to that. But I think one of the reasons, Josh, you're talking about like the fan backlash, and like how it was sprung on them. I think this fan backlash is different as well in the sense that it was sprung on them, but also in this case, the fans actively felt like something was being taken away from them without warning, without notice, without consultation. The fans saw the ability to host a grand final as something that was theirs. Or, like if their team does well enough, I get to go to a home grand final. Or if my team makes the grand final, I get to travel to Adelaide or Newcastle or Perth or Brisbane. It was something that was theirs. And I think that was one of the other things driving the backlash. It felt like that had been taken away from them and they were being told that it was for the greater good, but they didn't buy that it was for the greater good. They just saw it as being taken away from them for profit with no, as you said, no indications as to why. So that I think is something else that has really driven that backlash. It's not just the fact that it was sprung on them, the fact that they felt something was taken from them in the process.
I think it's a good point because previously when the APL's kind of like introduced something new, like the All-Star game, that is a new concept. And whether people were against it, you weren't taking away something from them. You were just giving them something new that maybe they liked or didn't like. It is, I guess that's like some people compared it to the Super League protest, and look, it's nowhere, I think, near that level of kind of craziness yet. They had people out on the streets in front of stadiums and stuff. We haven't got to that point yet, but there is that thing, and I think maybe like there has to be a lot of lessons taken out of this from the league's perspective. One of the biggest things has to be like there's one thing to add something new to the dynamic, whether you add in 2 new teams, right? So, there's a rumor going around that potentially expansion is going to happen soon with Canberra and Auckland as 2 of the teams involved in that.
Listen, we'll talk about this on future shows. Massively against Auckland as an expansion franchise. Go on.
Nice. But to take away something in the same way, if you just said, we're getting rid of, I don't know, insert team here, Sydney FC, for example. I think there would be much bigger backlash. Well, I think it's a really interesting point about like how, like we said, we didn't have we don't have that many traditions to take one away that was really good. I don't know.
And so few of the incentives in the A-League are actually based on sporting merit. So like the competition seems to be allergic to it. We don't have promotion and relegation. We got salary caps. There's for years, a majority of the teams were making finals, rewarding mediocrity. They've reduced the amount of finals games. No more home and away semi-finals. Hosting finals and hosting grand finals is one of the few rewards for actually finishing top of the table. Now that the schedule is completely uneven and you don't play every team the same number of times, let alone the same number of times home and away, the regular season is just being more and more devalued. And finishing top of the table and hosting the grand final is one of the few things on offer to the team that is the best in the competition over the run of the 26 games. So to take that away just further reinforces how artificial and the A-League really is, and it takes away authenticity. And this is a code in a sport and a particular league that's trying to cling on to any shred of authenticity that it can get its hands on. So especially the fans, because they're always having to confront the idea that this is these are created clubs and this is a franchise league and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
You need something that's actually based on merit to validate going to all these regular season games and actually being invested in them.
One thing I think was kind of interesting in the justification of it, there was talk of, I think Danny Townsend said, we want it to be kind of like, our cup final, the FA Cup is always at Wembley and the German Cup finals always at the Berlin Stadium, the Olympic Stadium. Then, I mean, there's obviously a difference in the size of the country, and traveling is a massive thing with that. And I understand that, and that is a tradition in itself. And if you change that, if you said, "Oh, we're not doing Wembley anymore, we're just kind of moving it around wherever," maybe there would be an issue with that. But also, I heard it kind of justified as it's going to be like the championship playoff, in England, to go up the thing. And while that's an amazing game and everyone gets really excited about that, I think the big thing is there. And Josh, you mentioned it all the time, and I always kind of go back to it, is the reason that the championship playoff matters so much is promotion and relegation and the excitement of promotion. We don't have that. And, that has to be like part of the thing. Is that I think you're right, is that we've had this league for 18 years. And one thing you would say is it has lacked authenticity, or it has lacked that feeling of every game matters. And we need to move the game towards where every game matters. And, we've talked about whether that's through derbies and how much derbies matter or how much rivalries matter. And actually, like, even if it's not a traditional geographical rival, whether it's a rivalry based on a club transfer or something like that, to play that up and to make every game matter. I think you can, where you position on the league, you need to make sure that matters as well. So I think moving away from that is the wrong decision. You need to just inevitably move every strategy needs to be, how do we make as many games matter as possible in this league? And this decision doesn't do that.
And I know it's only for 3 years, but the messaging around this is we're creating a new tradition, which suggests that it's going to be permanent if it's successful. And that means that we will never have another grand final at Amy Park. We'll never have a grand final Hindmarsh or Adelaide Oval as it was back in 2016. We'll never have another grand final at Optus Stadium in Perth. We'll never have another Suncorp grand final. And these are some of the most treasured memories for fans who've been able to attend those games and see their team win a grand final. They are some of the memories that keep you going and you talk about for years afterwards. If the grand final was in Sydney every year, I probably would never have been to one. Not as a fan, and probably not as a journalist either. So, it really saddens me. That's taking away a very fundamental part of being a fan. And some of the best memories that we've had in the A-League, like those Ange teams at Suncorp, those grand finals, packed out stadium in Orange. We're never going to have that again, and that's a tragedy.
Do we even have that amazing grand final against the Mariners in that fashion? Like, did the home crowd massively help with the way that they came back in the last couple of minutes against the Mariners? Look, this is the thing, is I think the question now is like, can it be reversed? And how much is that going to like cause an issue with the New South Wales government?
I don't think it can be reversed. If you're announcing it, If you're announcing it, the contract is inevitably going to be signed. Yeah. Do you think the New South Wales government's going to be in a favour to do Oz Soccer a solid and let them out the contract? I can't imagine there's a back door.
If there's enough backlash,
I mean,
politicians
if
are
there's
political animals.
boycotting,
You know.
yeah.
If there's boycotting, that's not the New South Wales government's problem.
No, but the New South Wales government is paying, I don't know what the figure is, but let's say it's 15 million. They're paying that on the basis that we are going to get fans traveling to New South Wales in May. Because this is also the thing. Like, from the New South Wales government point of view, the government doesn't care about football.
$15 million is a lot to the APL.
Yeah,
in government terms, that's not a lot. That's not a massive investment for the biggest state in the country.
Yeah, but they are.
It might be one of those classic
reason...
A-League mutual terminations if the bad publicity actually starts to blow back on the New South Wales government as well.
And to be honest, but I also get the feeling from the messaging coming out of the APL that there isn't a lot of interest in backing down. I mean, listen, you don't know how much of it is Kool-Aid, but you do get, like, if you listen to Danny Townsend speaking, you get the feeling that he does believe in this concept of a festival of football. And, like, I have no doubt in the months ahead, assuming there isn't a reversal. Oh, Jesus, I can't let that go. Force majeure, not force manure.
You got to read out the comments.
All right, read it. Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, Stoll, pick out your favorite comments. We'll go to you in a second for the comments.
Get ready, people. Some gold is coming.
Yeah, but I imagine in the months ahead, we'll get the announcement of a big European side that will come out and play an All-Stars game around the same time as the grand final. We'll get announcements surrounding things, turning this into a festival of football. Because I think the A-League...
live hostings in Sydney, come up and meet your favourite TNCer.
I think the A-Leagues probably saw, like, yes, there was an initial backlash to the A-League's All-Stars, but from what I could tell, by the time it had come and gone, there was sort of a level of affection for it.
It was fun.
It was fun. I mean,
dribbling Barca players. Yeah, come on.
Does Garang Kuol get the move to Newcastle if he doesn't play in that game?
Chance. No.
So I can see why I can see the APL seeing that and that's why they're talking about eat your vegetables.
And what was the criticism last time? Was that game wasn't connected to the grand final enough, and they were doing it on grand final week, and we're not leveraging the fact that blah blah the grand that all 85,000 people or whatever are going to see Barca, and then only 20,000 or whatever is going to see the grand final. So they've obviously responded to that by creating this. Yeah, it's a big swing. There is no ding.
All right. And one last thing before we get to the comments, and then we'll pick up, I guess, on if this can be salvaged. I have a bone to pick with every person on soccer Twitter that's been using that Wembley comparison and calculating the distance between Wembley and the farthest ground in England and using St. James Park as their reference point. No. Carlisle United's ground is further from Wembley than St. James Park. Get it right. It's Carlisle that is furthest from Wembley, not Newcastle United.
They're furthest from Wembley in many ways.
Yeah, go to the comments.
All right, look. First of all, I want to start with, look, you guys in the comment section, it's great. I've been looking at them. I'm loving them. Started off very early. A lot of strong stuff. Shaz just opened with, can't wait to waste 4 hours of my life. All right, that's what I like to see when I'm about to start a show. The audience already, the intro was playing, and already we were getting smashed for this. I really liked what Antonis Pagonis opened with. Can you imagine the pod starting and Danny Townsend showing up, informing everyone the APL had purchased TNC, and then just shutting it down? Look, we would never sell out unless there was really good money, and then obviously we would. Come on, we're just doing this for fun. But if they gave us the 15 million, mate, see you later. You're never going to hear from me ever again. No problem. But there's been many great comments. Nicola Webster says, "Stoll, get that shirt off." mate, this I'm wearing an Argentinian jersey the wrong way around because look, we'll get onto the World Cup eventually, but I do feel like people have forgotten that there's a World Cup semi-final on tomorrow, by the way. But everyone keeps asking me, "Oh, who are you supporting? Who do you think's going to win?" Look, man, don't ask me. Well, I'm just thinking about one human being, all right? And like, you shouldn't think about one person when you think about a team sport in the same way you probably shouldn't think about one city when you think about a national competition. But at the end of the day, whether it's Messi or Sydney, they're both wonderful. So I'm glad to be a part of both of them.
I love that, Stoll. I'm only thinking about one human being, and it's not Freya, his partner.
No, I do love her, and I wish her all the best as she sits upstairs while I do this podcast. Good luck in that.
You just wish her all the best. Thanks and success, Freya, but my heart belongs to Messi.
But yeah,
moving swiftly along.
Yeah, move along. I don't know. There's so many comments coming in. Keep sending them in. I'll find some good ones.
Ducking and weaving.
Okay. Antonis Pagonis actually made a good point. If you take something away, 1, you need to be transparent. Why? 2, you better detail where every dollar goes. 3, ask. I don't really know what he means.
Why didn't they leak this and float a test balloon just to see what the reaction was going to be?
That's
like
I'm
media 101, isn't it? Why did it
look,
come out the night before?
Leak it to Joey 5 months ago. And, the typical thing, the APL is considering an approach from the New South Wales government to host the next 3 grand finals in Dada. You let everyone go a little nuts, and then you come out and say, I don't know what that report was about. We were never seriously considering it. And you distance yourself from Joey nice, like we do on this pod all the time. It's just the media 101. And everyone can save face, and it's all good. Like, there is a couple of things, I think, kind of maybe just to put a bow on all this. It's the decision itself. It's the way that decision was communicated. And then I guess the way that decision was also rolled out. And I think those 3 things, like it's kind of all been really bad. But even still, with it all being really bad, just the level of anger, like, actually impressed me.
I don't think Danny Townsend had the political capital for this, to be honest. I think he was already viewed with suspicion by most A-League fans after a lot of false promises, and particularly the Paramount Plus stuff where it was like promise, pause and rewind by this date, and it never happened, and who knows if it will ever happen. So there's been so many false starts, and so many times where he's come out on Twitter and said things, and it hasn't happened, and it's I think people are starting to smell a rat with him, and I don't think he had the political capital to pull an unpopular policy like this off.
Well, I think there's a couple of comments I want to get to as well, but on that, it's important. I think, like, there's been a lot of focus on Danny Townsend throughout this thing. We're sort of falling into the Roger Goodell in the NFL, or the Adam Silver in the NBA, or the Paul Bettman in the NHL sort of trap, that we are assigning all the evils of the world onto one individual figure, which in a way is what these people are paid for. That's like part of the job. You become the face of the leagues, and whenever the leagues do anything bad, you just go out there and do media, and everybody hates on you. But
like being prime minister, someone in your cabinet stuffs up, and you have to, like, even though you hate them, they've been your political rival forever, and you have to be like, oh yeah, but I take responsibility.
It's like Danny Townsend is the CEO of the APL. He's not the chairman. Like, he serves at the pleasure of the board, not the other way around. Like, this decision, obviously now clubs are coming out and coming against it, and it's a bit of a flustercluck, but Danny Townsend is not the dictator of the A-Leagues. Like, he didn't just one day come in and, slam his proverbial on the table. Dan. No, he didn't come in one day, slam his proverbial on the table and say, this is happening, everybody follow my lead. Like people calling for like all this, that, and the other. Like, this was an A-League's decision. They have their own reasoning behind it. It's not just one man. I think that's important to take into account. Now, and that also doubly goes for, people wishing, I've seen a few people wishing physical harm on him, and that's not on. That's not on. But yeah, on the comments. question for Nick Stoll from
Go on.
Toros. Does Nick sign his Christmas card to Freya thanking success?
No, Torres, but what a great idea. I have been signing off work emails with thanks and success. I do wonder what people think about that at the end. But look, try it in your own personal life. See if it gets you anywhere.
And the other one, a more serious one, Matthew Pappas, need a fan representative on the APL board so this doesn't happen again. Nick, you had a great comment in the group chat yesterday, or was it this morning, about how there's like no...
This could go anywhere.
about how there's no recognized leader of this fan backlash. Now, you were talking about it from a media perspective, how in like all the fans are united with what they're speaking with one voice. They have the supporter groups are talking, but you can't have one unified voice or one supporter group on the radio or on television. You need a recognized leader. But
it's less effective. If you just read out, we've all released statements, it's less effective than someone coming on and saying this is the problem. And that's, by the way, that's what producers are looking for. Producer radio stations and TV stations. Like, the fans should consider maybe each fan group having a representative spokesperson.
Yeah, because, and that also goes for like representation on the board or advisory panels. That was one thing. Bo Bush's comment today, statement talking about the need for consultation and the need for more advisory bodies that include more stakeholders. Right now, like, you would probably go out to the various supporter groups and ask for a representative, but it's still a bit vague. So like maybe that's another thing with all this, like the fans are unified voice, but as we saw in 2015, there like wasn't a recognized fan leader in those protests as well. So that's one thing that I think
it turned out to be Mark Bosnich, actually.
But like it is an important point, because like we always talk about, you know, what the fans want and what, you know, and consulting with the fans. Like, it is kind of, I sympathize a little bit with like consulting with fans, because you can just get, like you say, you can just get a bunch of random fans and you can get 25 different opinions and it doesn't really go anywhere. It does maybe need to be, I guess, it doesn't need to be, but I think the game would be better off if fan groups were kind of meeting regularly, discussing their issues that they have. Look, whether it's this grand final thing or not, whether it's things like kickoff times, whether it's things like fixturing, whether it's things like scheduling and all the things that affect fans, policing, all the things that they want. And from what we hear that clubs are always talking to the fan groups, but I think it'd be good if the league was obviously kind of also in consultation with, and also the Socceroos as well, and the Matildas and, you know, the Football Australia. So I do think for the betterment of the game, a bit more structure in place would help everyone.
Yeah, I mean, but, you know, if it's OSM or whatever, they're going to blur their faces and use voice changes, like, you know. Well, so there's a level of anonymity that some of the groups actually demand.
Well, okay,
and they don't trust media and they don't want to speak to media.
Okay, that's exactly what happened with the Wanderers thing and the Flares back in the day. I remember I was working for SBS at the time, and I, you know, as we all know, don't mind the Flares. Quite enjoy, you know, enjoy them, but enjoy them by being effing disciplined, as we like to say, right?
Let me tap the clip.
But everyone wanted to be like, you know, everyone, the only side of the story that you were hearing at the time was Flares are bad, Flares are illegal, and
all right, I got the clip.
By all means, enjoy it, but enjoy it by being fucking disciplined here.
Timing's everything, but it's always good to hear that clip. But the thing is, the problem with at that time was that you couldn't really find anyone to speak on the issue, because, the Wanderers, you know, fans that I spoke to were like, no, you know, we speak as one voice. No, we can't speak out on this. Now, what's interesting is there's been a rise of supporter broadcasters. So whether that's, you know, Victory, you know, podcasts, or the RBB have a kind of YouTube channel now. And I think it's important, you know, and look, I don't know if those guys specifically speak for the entire RBB and how, Wanderers fans would feel like that. And that's always the case in these things. But like, I do think it is important that if, as we say, football is nothing without fans, put the fans first, so on and so forth. I think all of us need to work towards helping that process be more clear.
Sorry, I've just got to go on a sidebar. Jamie Carragher just tweeted out that the England manager should always be English, and then a few minutes later, quote tweeted it. Obviously, having seen some of the replies, quote tweeted it saying, "Oh, and I voted for Remain."
That's amazing. Look, I don't know. Is there anything else we should talk about this grand final?
Well,
we haven't gone on for about 45 minutes.
Because on the subject of fan groups putting out statements, fan groups of A-League women's clubs put out statements as well. And that's the implications of this decision for the A-League women's, I think, is worth exploring. Because especially with a Women's World Cup on the horizon, supposedly the latest shining beacon on the hill that was going to lead Australian football in a new direction. Apparently, Young Boy has a fan contingent in Papua New Guinea that would like to talk to him.
Fijian footballers overseas, says in the comments, Lockie Flanagan coming on, ? People of PNG would like to talk to. Does that sound vaguely threatening? Just come outside. I just want to talk.
Come outside, Lockie. The people of PNG just want to talk.
That's remarkable.
What did you say to PNG?
What did you do? Tommy Semi maybe wants to have a chat. I don't know. But the impact on the A-League women's competition is going to be something that worth watching going forward, because we've had these conversations running. What happens if in the A-League men? What happens if Western United play Wellington Phoenix or Perth Glory in Sydney? What happens if Adelaide United finally break through and after so many years of hurt win the right to host the grand final and discover that they are now playing Brisbane Roar or Western United in Sydney? How many fans are going to be able to make the trip, first of all, because the demographics that support the A-League women's competition are different than the demographics that support the A-League men competition. This was something that the APL themselves said, that there is a unique fan base that supports the A-League women's competition. From anecdotal experience, it skews younger, it skews female, it skews oftentimes also to, from what I can see, people that aren't insecure employment, that are in insecure employment, that maybe can't take a week off at the drop of a hat to go and support their team in the A-League Women's Grand Final. So that is something I'm going to, bears watching going forward, especially for 2023 or in the aftermath of the Women's World Cup. Do we want rather than say Adelaide winning hosting rights and hosting the grand final in a packed out Hindmarsh Stadium? They already set a crowd record once for an A-League women's regular season game in Hindmarsh Stadium. Do we want to see them? Sorry, I'm distracted by the comments that are hilarious. Do we want to see them setting a new record in Hindmarsh, or what crowds will they get against a Western United in Sydney Football Stadium? What will the optics look like of that game at Sydney Football Stadium? Is that fair on the players and the fans and the coaching staff with the different demographics? So that is something that is going to bear watching moving forward. No doubt the APL will have pre-prepared answers to these questions. I can't imagine they didn't prepare for this cutting into the announcement, and there's been so much furor and so much anger, it hasn't really come up yet. But that's going to bear watching moving forward. Josh, you had your hand up.
I just want to say, these decisions are made by a bunch of rich dudes. They don't think about airfares. They're not thinking about the cost of traveling interstate to see the game. They're not thinking about the demographics of fans who might support the A-League women's versus the men's. I just don't think they think about this stuff. They just see, an 8-figure sum in front of them and say, yeah, I mean, let's go for it. Like, I don't think.
Or do they? And are they still like the money that we get from this deal outweighs that?
But
and then is that a sign of how desperate they are for money?
I just think the life experience of these people is a bit different to the rest of us, and they haven't struggled to afford a domestic airfare recently. Let's be real. And we get on to Anthony DiPietro resigning his position from the APL board. Reading between the lines of that statement, it sounds as if he initially voted for it and has seen the backlash and has decided to step down in response. I can't say for sure because the statement doesn't say whether or not, but that it seems as if he can no longer stand by this decision to host the grand final in Sydney. And I think that's good that they've listened to the supporters. I think that's really good. I don't think doubling and tripling down on this is going to make it any better. I don't think this is going away. I don't think this is blowing over like the APL thinks it will. But the league is skewing, the management of the league is skewing exceptionally corporate. And I think that's going to result in more decisions like this that are pretty tone deaf and out of touch with the common fan, the average person.
Which kind of calls, that's the reason you need to have more consultation with fans. Because even if you are out of touch, as long as you're consulting with people who are in touch, that can help guide any decisions you're making, especially if it's going to affect those people. Look, just before we kind of move on from this, we've been spending 50 minutes on it, so probably should move on.
We spent like 10 minutes talking shit at the start.
That's heritage, TNC heritage. Yeah, come on, mate.
We've got to let people join the stream,
Look, I just, want to talk about, obviously, a good friend of ours, Nick Dabano, who was getting, hammered yesterday, and there was a few comments I saw as well. Look, the very first thing that should be said is that when you think Nick Dabano has anything to do with this decision, I mean, the guy can't even get his microphone working. Can't even get his microwave working. All right. So they're not going to let him decide to move it to Sydney or whatever. So
it wasn't him. It was Lockie Flanagan's decision.
All right.
Lockie's there a week and this happens. It was Lockie that did this.
No, look, I wanted to say it's not. Nick Dabano doesn't have anything to do with the decision. Secondly, there was a lot of heat on him, appearing on the A-League's podcast, which, I thought he did very well on. He didn't even speak about the A-League grand final decision. So he hasn't even revealed his opinions on that publicly. He wrote, I think, an article, but just kind of explaining the decision, as is his role at the A-League. So I just thought...
he just published the press release on the website. He's just doing his job,
So
easy.
I would just say that, I was kind of very disappointed to see so many people have a go at Nick, pile on for Nick, because, A, come on, what do you actually expect? And, B, he's one of us as well, he's one of the guys. So I just thought, that was a shame. And I just think, anyway, even the piling on, even I thought the piling on to Danny Townsend specifically was too much. I don't like individual pylons. I don't mind if you say, I'm against the decision. This is a bad decision. I don't like the decision that the APL is making. And maybe this is the problem with, and I think, maybe someone else on TNC has made this point before, but I can't remember if they made it publicly or privately, so I won't say who it is. But about the problems of being a public-facing CEO and how, when you're so, as you were talking about, when they become the focal point of success and anger. And I just think it's not good. It's not healthy. It's not, progressive in any way. It won't help change by hounding one person who especially is in kind of a public role. And I just don't think it achieves anything, except obviously
and some of the most powerful people in Australian football don't say a word in public.
Yeah.
I
wouldn't even recognize some of the most powerful people. Like Chris Fong, if he was sitting at my kitchen table, I'd have no idea who he is.
I don't think I could pick Simon Pearce out of a lineup, but he seems to have a lot of influence over a lot of stuff in Australian football, and he's on the APL board as well. So,
I concur completely with that. I think
Now, Lockie, on the other hand, if you want to hammer him,
it's all Lockie's fault. Like,
that's that
The
joke.
people
I
of
saw
Papua New Guinea
fighting it
are
on the
rising up
street.
against Lockie.
Well, apparently enough NPL players see Lockie on the street. The man seems to be an NPL magnet. Every second day he's got a story of seeing an NPL player on the street. But question for both of you guys before we move on to other things. You are now in charge of the APL. How do you salvage this? How do you salvage this? Because as I said, I don't think this decision is being reversed. Is it possible to somehow get the soccer public back on board?
It's difficult. This grand final is going to be tainted. You know what you need to do? You need to rig it so Sydney FC or the Wanderers or MacArthur comes first every year, so that therefore you'll be like, well, look, it was never. They would always hosted it. This isn't a change.
This is also part of the problem, is that the APL and even the FFA before them have always been seen by people outside of New South Wales and outside of Sydney as an extremely Sydney-centric organisation, and there's always accusations of bias here and there, which I'm sure are baseless, but that's already the perception that they're fighting.
I do remember speaking with a trade unionist from London. At the time the APL went independent, he was vociferous in his belief that they should base themselves in Melbourne to make a clean break with the FA and to shrug off some of those accusations of Sydney bias.
Do you think as well, I live in Sydney, right? So I just immediately assume it's the best city and don't ever worry about any of the other cities around the country. But do you actually think it eats into a bigger thing as well about I don't know, if you live, and I mean, let us know in the comments, if you live in other cities, do you think the country is too Sydney centric? I mean, we talk about it if you want a job in media, the best place to move to is probably Sydney because it has the most media
Not
jobs.
Probably, it is.
Okay,
if you want to work in soccer media, move to Sydney.
Or just media in general.
Yeah, but if you want to work in so many industries, you have to move to Sydney. And does it eat is there also that is that part of the
110%? You think that the other states, especially the ones that not on the Eastern Seaboard, don't have a chip on their shoulder about that already?
Yeah, everything's up for Sydney. Broadcast
parochial
times.
Thing in South Australia and Western Australia that we can laugh about or whatever, but it's real.
I just say, great comment from Alan Riley, who, by the way, amazing that I can somehow see your comments. I should have you muted, but anyway, Alan Riley just says, they write for the Sydney paper.
They do.
Excellent.
And that's the perception that the administration of the game is always fighting. So that just is a double whammy. I wanted to get to this comment from 3 Happy Carrots on YouTube. Stephen Lowy, be careful what you wish for. Is this a good example of what Stephen Lowy was referring to back at the time of the divorce?
Nah, he was just saying shit to say shit.
Yeah.
It's like when you break up with your girlfriend and you're like, you want this now, but you'll be coming back. There's some nonsense like that. That was just what he was saying. Do you think he can predict the future like Samuel Eto'o, that Morocco is going to make the final or whatever? No, he just said it. He wasn't that, in 4 years' time, they'll try and move the, grand final to Sydney. And
I'm sure he didn't know that, but...
does anybody think Frank Lowy wouldn't have signed that deal either? Or Stephen Lowy wouldn't have signed that deal either?
Just because he's Stephen Lowy doesn't make what he said untrue. The administration at the time was so hapless that none of what Gallup or Lowy said as they were dragged kicking and screaming out the door was taken seriously. But is there a point to be made that the APL being a separate entity leads to these sort of decisions that are, I guess, a bit more inherently selfish and not a good of game?
One thing I think is really difficult for people in power is we don't see the decisions they don't make. We don't see the choices that they reject. So I don't know. For example, this might have been on the table years ago, and Frank Lowy, Stephen Lowy, whoever might have been like, no way. Like, we have a great tradition. I don't want to take away from fans. That's an amazing comment. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but it basically is RRB. Says Lowy was going to host the grand final at Doncaster Westfield.
Oh, that would have been amazing. That's like 3 minutes from my house.
So
hold it in the car park. Everyone's shuffling on the sidelines.
Yeah, and then plays scribes. How many dudes roll like this? But like that is hard. Like, I don't know. We don't know the the deal that the APL has rejected. So I do think that's hard, because it's hard to give them credit for something that they say no to, because that will never kind of come out.
We do know that they were offered a longer deal that they knocked back.
Well,
Townsend has said as much. He hasn't said how long the extra deal was on the record, but he has said that there was a longer deal. He has said, he has said that there was a longer deal on the table that they did knock back.
Yeah,
but listen, on the Lowy stuff, I'm going to fall back on like multiple things can be true at once. Like, you can dislike the job that the APL's doing, and not think that you can think whatever you want about the APL. That doesn't mean that governance reform didn't need to happen. Like, just because of all this happens doesn't mean that the Lowies should have continued their dynastic control of Australian football. Like, multiple things can be true at once. You might not like the current direction.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. You might not like the current direction of the APL for whatever reason, but I remember that, like, the Congress wars, like, just because you don't like the outcome at the moment doesn't mean that the actual, original intention wasn't right.
Look, it's kind of like the World Cup bid, right? Like, it's, at the same time, it's like, oh, it made us lose focus, and maybe we shouldn't have bid on the World Cup and da-da-da. Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, we should bid on World Cups. Like, we should try and host these things now. Obviously, evidently we might have needed to be way better at, let's say, doing deals with other countries regarding trade. But, I don't know. It's I think, look, the other thing as well is I actually don't think the APL has been doing that badly. I think Keep Up has improved. I think they've done well with that. I think they've, made improvements in certain aspects of the game and things that we've been calling for, like a longer A-League women's season and that kind of thing. There's been things that they've done that I like, and that doesn't, that's the thing. Like, one bad decision, and also, I don't know, a part of me thinks as well, like, and this is also why you float the test balloon. He's like, just because someone has a bad idea or a bad opinion, like, if someone thinks this is a good idea, I don't think you should kill them for thinking it's a good idea. If that's their opinion, that's their opinion. I think sometimes we lose our minds when we disagree with people, and that is not necessarily a healthy thing for ourselves or for the wider game.
And it's like the APL has been exacting, like you talk about, has the APL been doing good things? The APL has been doing all the good things you would expect the APL to do. This is a body made up of 12 A-Leagues clubs, private equity from Silver Lake. They have been making decisions that are entirely, you would expect an organization running a closed league like that to do. And a lot of them have worked out very well for the A-Leagues. Now, like, personally, like, I think everybody on this show is, like, in the tank for a national second division, proper connection with the pyramid, all of that sort of stuff. But if you're looking at this from an APL perspective, like, they have been acting exactly like a competent organization running a closed football league designed to protect its members and maximize profit and maximize its own product would be acting to this point. So, like, it just, expanding on your point from that, Nick Stoll.
I don't know. I think I just expect some of the people running the game to take a longer view of this. We've just come off the back of one of the most memorable Socceroos campaigns at a World Cup ever,
Oh
I
yeah,
think
I'm not saying that this was one of their good ideas,
No.
Josh. I'm just
no, but
like
you're saying you're putting forward kind of a realist kind of argument for why they behave the way they do. And I don't know, maybe I'm a wide-eyed, naive optimist, but I would have thought that you can take a longer view and see that, things might be good for you, but it might not be good for the bigger picture. And
Yeah.
then when it blows back on you, it actually might hurt you in the long term. Essentially, like with fans, putting fans offside in this way, I think will eventually hurt the profit margins of the
Like
I'm not-
like the
I'm not
expansion
arguing that
teams
point.
that came in with Western United and MacArthur. It's like similar. I get like this is the problem with the A-League, and this has been the problem with the A-League since day dot. Short-termism survival, decisions made to just keep money coming in so the lights can still go on, has inflicted and kind of conditioned negatively the long-term future of the game. And that's been an issue since day one. There was an issue when they only had one team in each city, and there was an issue when they had to kind of constantly, like, the reason that the A-League season is the length that it is and is in summer is because Fox Sports needed something to cover them for when the NRL and AFL season stopped. And that's why basically the A-League used to always start the week after those leagues finished and basically concluded by the time, I don't know, they were a couple rounds in or whatever. So yeah, I totally agree with you. And I just think inevitably we're just going to get to a point. I think I've said this part. We're inevitably just going to get to a point where football is like it is everywhere else in the world. And I don't know why we have like 150 case studies around the world where it's all, let's have promotion relegation. Let's have a football pyramid. Let's have, 34 games a year or whatever. Let's have a competition that runs, at the same time that isn't necessarily, finals and all that kind of stuff. Like, I just think we're inevitably going to get there because that's the way football works everywhere else. And there's a reason. It's not because those countries, don't have AFL or something. It's because that is the best way to run football. So I just think we're going to get there eventually. And we should just be moving in that direction. I get we can't get there overnight, but that should be the long-term goal. And anything that deviates from that long-term goal better be absolutely necessary to the immediate survival of the game.
And I have no doubt in my mind that if the APL could kneecap a national second division right now, right here, they would. And it's just as well that Football Australia has the final say over whether there is promotion and relegation in this country, because they're acting in a narrow, self-interested way. And if we're going to get there, there needs to be a degree of big picture thinking and cooperation. And I don't think it exists right now. I don't think you can get there,
Let's not act like Football Australia is perfect here. Do we think there would be a massive push for the national second division, as massive as it is, if the Football Australia still controlled the A-Leagues?
Yeah, well, maybe not. A lot of this is political posturing, and sometimes people do the right things for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, well, sorry to come in with my realist, cynical bent, but yeah, like the FA were the ones that
I just want everyone to
the
hold
system.
hands and sing Kumbaya and get us to football utopia. Is that too much to ask?
No, as I previously said on this show, Josh Parrish, I am the worst person in the world.
And on that note, I think it is time to talk about France 2, England 1. England are out of the World Cup, guys. Heartbreak on penalties again. Name a more iconic duo, England and penalty heartbreak.
I mean,
TNC and starting light.
Look, I mean, all I've got to say on this is because you got to. One of the best things about every World Cup is when England gets knocked out. But you know what? I got to say, this is the first time I haven't massively celebrated England getting knocked out, because a couple of reasons. I actually thought they played decent against France. I didn't think they weren't a horrible team that, just stunk it up and then, got knocked out on penalties or whatever like they have previously. They're also quite an affable team. There's a lot to like about these players and this coach, I think. the main reason I wasn't hugely wanting them to get knocked out is I just haven't seen the videos that you get every tournament of English fans acting like assholes in, squares in the host cities and the host countries or whatever. It's man, all that nonsense, right? I didn't see it. Maybe I don't know why, because maybe there isn't alcohol widely available in Qatar. Maybe the cost of living is an issue. They haven't flown over. Maybe it's the way that Qatari. No one wants to get in trouble with the Qatari police. Maybe the fact that back home in England, it's winter and, there's not that many people gathering in big public squares and sticking flares up their asses to celebrate. But, this was the first time where I didn't massively celebrate. I will admit I went a little bit ooh, when Kane missed. But, credit to you, Joey. You're getting a bit less hateable.
Mildly less obnoxious than before.
Yeah.
The England national team.
It's a podcast. You have to say something. People are going to think
there was a hell of a lot of copium from English supporters after the game. We were the better team. There's nothing really wrong with what we did. There's fine margins in international football, and sometimes sometimes you come out the wrong side.
Let me get this out of the way. Referee missed a clear foul on Saga in the build-up to the first goal. Should have called a foul on Harry Kane on that incident outside the box, so that when VAR reviewed it, it was clearly a foul, but they couldn't award it because it wasn't initially a reviewed one. Having said that, England's were not robbed. France were the better team. France were good value for their win. Would it have been daylight robbery if England had won? No. But on the balance of play, observing the way the two sides went about it, England's can't have too many complaints about being knocked out to France. I base that specifically on what happens when the scores were at 0-0 and what happened when the scores were at 1-1. During those periods, France were the better side. For whatever reason, Didier Deschamps was more content to sit back and allow the English to play when his side was 1-0 up and 2-1 up, which gave England some hope. And that genuinely could have bitten Deschamps on the arse, because I think Saka was one of the best players on the pitch. Maybe Griezmann was better, but Saka was right up there, and he could have punished them. Harry Kane is one of the best centre-forwards in the world, and whenever you have one of the best centre-forwards in the world on the pitch, they can always do something to punish you at a moment's notice. So Deschamps' willingness to be passive when he had the lead could have bitten him, but France were good value for their win. And now moving forward, heading into the last four, I decidedly hope that France win the entire thing. Because that outcome will upset the most amount of people, and I want everybody else to be as miserable as me. There's romance surrounding Messi in Argentina. There's romance around Morocco. There's romance and good times surrounding tiny Croatia winning. Screw that. Misery for everyone. No fairy tales for anyone. The French go back to back and we all hate it. The French that helped Qatar, steal the World Cup bid, that helped them bribe the World Cup. They win it in Qatar. Nobody's happy except the French. Everyone's miserable, just like I am.
Look, can I just say, you remind me of Mr. Burns when he wanted to block out the sun in The Simpsons, and which wouldn't be, that much of a change for you, being from England. I think the sun has been permanently blocked out.
As I said, Nick Stoll, I am the worst person in the world.
Which, Given who was at Qatar is a pretty incredible thing.
Mm.
By the way, look, very quickly, how annoying is them cutting to Infantino every 5 minutes? Good God, man.
I don't know, mate. I was in the stadiums.
Blatter did some bad things, but he never made the TV broadcast cut to him every time at the 5th minute mark. And then he also looks so annoyed that he's at the football. God, I hate that man. Anyway.
Today I feel angry.
All right, listen.
On a football point, I found both the English midfield setup for starters with Henderson, Rice, and Bellingham. Acting as if Bellingham is like this creative genius is totally perplexing to me. He's like a third man runner. He's good at that, but he's a PNP kind of box to box sort of guy. And I really think you need an actual playmaker in there. Maybe, if Gareth Southgate didn't hate James Maddison so much, he could have picked him. Someone like that.
Play Phil Foden centrally.
You know what? Yeah, that's another option. But also,
I like Bellingham. I don't think he's.
I like him, but
genius,
I don't think he's your 10. I don't think he's a.
No. That's true.
He's more. His skills are kind of dribbling on the counter attack, and getting into the box, and pressing, and those are his attributes. It's not about picking the pass that's going to unlock the defense. That's sitting deep against you, and also the way that they defended. They left their rest defense with basically Henderson moving to right wing back in possession and then moving Walker inside and playing like a pretend back 5 because they were scared of Mbappe, which was a bit funny. I think hamstrung them with the ball, and that was so cautious the way they were moving it around. There was a lot of just Harry Maguire booting the ball into touch because they didn't want to give the ball away. Eventually, Saka started coming inside in the second half and started creating that option, and they started really threatening. And then Southgate brought him off. They conceded a goal, and they made the same subs that they were going to make anyway, with Sterling and Mount coming on and Bukayo Saka coming off. So I just thought Southgate's in-game management was pretty terrible, to be honest. I know, he's got a lot of goodwill or whatever. It's mixed. I guess people are lukewarm towards him. There's not a lot of Southgate out going on at the moment, but I think England can find a better manager than him, and I don't think they will win a World Cup or a major tournament with Southgate in charge, just because his in-game planning is too rigid.
Saw an article in the Guardian today advocating for Brendan Rodgers for England bus.
Gross. All right, look, come on. All
right. Before Nick Stoll has to leave at 7:30, there's been a title change. Nick Stoll.
There has. All right, look, for those of you that may have forgotten, because we introduced the A-Liga belt, I think, early on in the season, and then, unfortunately, we didn't get any title challenges for a while. So just a quick recap for those who remember. Prijovic started the season with the belt. Now, because he was the best player in the grand final. So to win the belt, you have to beat the team that has, the belt holder in it.
You got to beat the champ.
You got to beat the champ, and you have to be the best player on that team. So
the phrasing is, to be the man, you got to beat the man.
All right. Yeah, if that was a wrestling reference, it's 2v1 at this time, which I don't know if there's another wrestling reference, but anyway.
Are Ric Flair references really wrestling references at this point, or do they transcend into pop culture?
I don't really know Ric Flair.
You showed me a lineup.
With a tear in my eye.
If you showed me a lineup of Ric Flair, Chris Fong, and Simon Pearce, I don't know who any of the three of them are. All right. So anyway, my point is, Prijovic had it. He didn't play the first game. So if you don't play, availability is the best ability, as we like to say. Vacated. Alan Barisha won man of the match in that first game. He held it, even though he hasn't necessarily been man of the match in every game, because Melbourne City didn't lose. Now they came to Sydney with a new coach. And what happened? They lost 2-1. So Valen Barisha automatically gives up the belt. So it goes to a new holder, a new champion, a new hero emerges. When Australian football needed him most, we were, let's be honest, we didn't know on Saturday what was going to come in the next few days, but we need a new champion. And I'm here to tell you that, yes, TNC listeners, your new champion is the man of the match. is the man of the match of that game. He's not just me saying this, not just, some bias. The official man of the match, I think the Ned's player of the game or whatever they call it. Number 22 for Sydney FC, Max El Mago Burgess. Ding, 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 ding. We have a new champion. He is the champion, my friends. And he'll keep on starting till Bimby takes him out again.
So next week.
Yeah.
You could vacate the belt next week.
Look, I can confirm to TNC listeners that Max was made aware that he is now the belt holder, which he was very excited about. He's also annoyed that he had to pay a lot for parking as well. But that's another story. Look, you win
best
some,
city,
you lose
best
some.
city, hey.
Yeah, exactly. But yes, Max Burgess is our new champion, and until he is defeated, he shall remain champion.
Well, so Max Burgess is the A-Liga Hombres champ.
Oh, yes.
We should update. There's also been a change in the A-Liga Femenina belt,
Right.
of course.
Can
Casey
you please
Dumont,
announce that? Because I used all my energy on the Max.
Casey Dumont was the holder coming in, having been best on ground in last year's grand final. Melbourne Victory lost in round 1. And at the time, I'm not sure, you guys didn't announce this afterwards. We had the chat in the group chat, but you didn't announce it. So we decided to award player of the game in that one. And as Western United is still undefeated, she is still the reigning A-Liga Femenina belt champion, as I see Nick Stoll's in trouble with Freya. She was probably listening in earlier to the pod. But the reigning A-Liga Femenina champion, Western United's Alana Churn. Or she goes by Cern, but it's actually Churn. She goes by Cern because filthy Anglos can't pronounce her name. But Alana Churn is the A-Liga Femenina champion. So Western United collecting even more silverware.
All right, we need a nickname for Alana. Max is El Mago, which is Spanish for the magician. We're gonna need, because every champ needs a good name. Muhammad Ali, the greatest. I don't know.
She was the first ever Western United signing. Can we make something out of that?
Her name. It's got to be Alana Jackie Chan. I was like,
Alana, the OG Chan.
I like Alana Jackie Chan.
Which one did you like, Josh?
I think we need to workshop this a little bit more, to be honest.
Leave us a comment. What should Alana Chan's nickname be?
All right. Look, I've got 2 minutes. So if there's anything else you want to ask me, now is the time.
Well, a World Cup semi-final preview would be nice. Messi coming up against Croatia tomorrow morning for the RGs. I mean, first of all, how much were you swearing at the TV when Wout Weghorst almost ended his World Cup dream? How would it feel for the greatest player of all time to be mudded by an anti-vaxxer from Burnley?
I mean, look, it's like this is the problem, and I think Jonathan Wilson wrote about it in The Guardian really well the other day. This is the stress about watching every single game of Messi at the moment, is that every single game might be the end, might be the full stop on the greatest book that's ever been written in the history of football. This is so, and it could end at any moment. Wout Weghorst could end it. All right, that's what we're dealing with here. So thank God. Thank Diego Maradona that it didn't end. But it does feel surreal to think that in 4 days, 5-6 days time, that like legacies will be defined forever. If Croatia wins the World Cup, Luka Modric will be defined as the best midfielder ever. If he is not already, he's probably battling it out with a few people right now, but you would say if he takes Croatia to a World Cup victory, he's the greatest midfielder ever. Obviously, the Messi story, if he wins it with Argentina, he is undoubtedly the greatest player ever. I think he is anyway, but that's another thing.
Can't be the greatest ever unless you win a World Cup.
Yeah, okay, exactly. Right. See, we got another.
There's a lot of haters and losers out there.
What did
There's a lot of
Messi
haters and
say?
losers.
Give me that bobo. Give me that bobo.
Oh, that's the new thing. Like he made somebody want to uninstall Life.
Oh, what a comment. What? Oh, by the way, you telling me that Danny Townsend doesn't want to uninstall Life this week? Anyway, that's a new TNC-ism, by the way, uninstalling Life. When Messi says something bad to you, you just go, I want to uninstall Life. But Morocco, like if Morocco wins, that's the first African country ever. Like that would actually be the biggest, I think, World Cup shock ever for Morocco to have won.
Yep.
It's amazing this is all going to conclude in 5-6 days, and
with France winning.
Shut up, Joey. There's a thing of it freaks me out that when you've been thinking about something for years and years and years, and I've been thinking about Messi winning the World Cup since 2006, and it's finally here. This is it. This is, we've been playing some game forever, and we're finally on the final mission, battling the final boss, whatever it is. We've been watching a show for 15 seasons, and this is the final conclusion. It blows my mind, actually, on a serious level. I can't even control my emotions, and I'm sitting here in Sydney. I don't know what it would be like to play with him. I don't know what it would be like to be in the stadium supporting him. How do you emotionally deal with that? I can't, and I'm so far removed from it. So good luck to everyone. Listen,
I want to go to Alan Riley's comment. You have to get Ante on the pod if Croatia win the World Cup. We have been in contact with the aliens. Negotiations have been in place, and we have been informed that if Croatia win the World Cup, we can obtain visitation from everybody's favorite. I don't have a nickname here, but Ante will be on the show if Croatia wins the World Cup.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I won't be on the show if Croatia win the World Cup. Oh my God. The most obnoxious victory lap of all time.
It could be a completely unlistenable podcast, but he's going to come on anyway. So
it'll just be 60 minutes of one extended rant in Croatian about Modric being the best player of all time.
Look, I'm going to say something and then leave, and maybe that's a coward's way out. But do wonder what Ante's response would be if another team had lost the battle on XG in every single one of their games, more or less, since they smashed Canada and made it to the semifinals. I wonder how he would be referring to such a team. But,
I mean, it's different with Croatia. Something about relationism and midfields. I don't really understand it, but it's apparently different.
Improvising and...
They just manage games. They manage games. It's all part of the plan.
Should we reveal what Ante said about Messi's assist against the Netherlands?
No.
We won't. But let me tell you, I disagree.
It was a scandalous comment. It was a truly scandalous comment.
It was unbelievable. Oh. It was almost as scandalous as the pass itself. Almost as outrageous.
Anyway. Actually, before you go, because we're going to talk about it, Nick Stoll, one sentence or less, does Arnie deserve a new contract as Socceroos boss?
No. And
cool, that's one sentence. Thanks, Nick.
No. Let me quickly clarify. It is not about what you've done in the past. It is about what you will do in the future. Are we more likely to win the Asian Cup with Arnie? That's one question. If they deem that as yes, and he's doing really well with this team, and by the way, we got outplayed in most of the games, and we rode our luck. And if you look at the XG, actually, if you play those games 100 times, we lose the majority of those games. So that should be kind of. Are we more likely to win the Asian Cup with Arnie? That's the big question for me. I don't believe so. Secondly. And by the way, he did amazing at the World Cup. Congratulations to him. He's one of the most successful football managers Australia's ever produced. Well done. Get a statue. Enjoy. Thanks and success. Are we more likely to do well at the next World Cup if Arnie stays in the qualification phase? I think we're obviously going to qualify for the next World Cup. I would be stunned if we don't. I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but I'll be stunned if we don't. Are we more likely to be improved in 4 years' time when we do it? And that's why I say no. So... Thanks and success.
Thanks and success, Stoll. We'll see you next time. In the meantime, myself and Joey have a bit of time to tackle this question before we call it a night. Joey, where do you stand on Graham Arnold's position?
I'm sort of in a similar mindset looking at how this entire thing is unfolding to the my thoughts at the time that Ernie Merrick was appointed as the chief football officer. I'm very intrigued about the process surrounding this decision because it sort of feels like we have gone from a review will take place and the results will be sent to the Football Australia board in January in the new year. Arnie needs a holiday. It sort of feels like very quickly it's gone to it's Arnie's job to lose. Basically, it's his if he wants it. We're not going to market, yada, yada, yada. Either the review has gone at warp speed and been completed in what is effectively, 8 or 9 days since the Argentina game. The review has been completed, presented, absorbed, and the decision's made. Or the decision to bring back Graham Arnold has been made without the completion of this review. And I'm intrigued by the process behind it because as Nick Stoll said, it's about looking for the future and it's also looking to the past as well. And a review of Graham Arnold's tenure isn't just a review of 4 games in Doha. It's a review of the 4.5 years of his entire time as Socceroos boss. And we have to remember that earlier this year, after Japan and Saudi Arabia games, it looked like Graham Arnold was going to get the sack. There were figures, The Age and Sydney Morning Herald released a story saying the axe was imminent, citing figures in the Federation. So the turnaround from that to it's Arnold's job if he wants it, we're not going to market, is basically being entirely based on 6 competitive games of football: the UAE game, the Peru game, the game against France, which was a 4-1 hammering, which could have been more, the Denmark game, the Tunisia game, and the Argentina game. I'm not going to pretend like the games in Doha went better than any outside of the France game. The 3 games that followed that went better than anybody could have anticipated. But it feels as though if Graham Arnold is going to be offered a new contract on the back of it, it is Football Australia banking that a corner was turned after the end of the formal end of qualification and prior to the playoffs. It is banking on whatever has happened since then is what we will get going forward. And there are questions surrounding that. The circumstances surrounding certainly Australia's success at the World Cup. I'll ask you, Josh, did you see a concrete evolution in the way the Socceroos played under Graham Arnold in Qatar? Or did you just see game states and oppositions and circumstances that were more favourable to that style?
I saw a mentality shift and a shift in confidence from the players, but nothing tactically radically different. I mean, I think it was entirely dependent on context and being the side that doesn't have to take the initiative with the ball. That's conditioned every game that the Socceroos played in. And there were elements of luck in every game we played. The fact that Tunisia didn't finish a couple of their chances, etc., and so on. And they were marvelous results. Like, I don't want to, put a pin in the balloon by any means, but I actually don't think Arnold should take the job. That's where I stand on it. Whether Football Australia offer it to him or not, I think they're put in a difficult position because there's such good publicity towards him now, and they've had such a good campaign. It would feel harsh to say, you're done, mate.
Thanks to success.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks and success. After the highs of that campaign, but I don't think Arnold should take it because all he will be doing is like potentially tainting his legacy. Is it going to get any better than this for Graham Arnold? I don't think so. He has been vindicated. History will vindicate him in the fact that he got the Socceroos out of the group and gave Argentina a game. I think that's as good a legacy as any Socceroos manager has had. And if we, go out to the UAE in the quarterfinals or whatever in the Asian Cup, like I think that undermines the achievement. So, why would you want to put yourself through the ringer again when you have the chance to strike while the iron is hot for a new job, while he's potentially in demand? Because if you do well at the World Cup, the shop window for managers is just as effective as it is for players at the World Cup. And you have a chance to kind of make this permanent. So I think I don't think the Socceroos are necessarily in a better position than they were to win the Asian Cup next year just because of this World Cup campaign, because the challenge is going to be so much different. It's going to be more like playing in qualifying, and maybe you can carry some of that confidence in, but the first bad result and that confidence goes out the window.
It didn't go. I will give them credit for the sense that they got a bad result against France, and the confidence didn't go out of the window. But other than that, I'm in complete agreement with you, Josh. I think if I was Graham Arnold, I would be going out on an absolute high by now. I'd be taking a well-paid job in clublands where, as he said, he could maybe have a bit more of his life back or something like that. I think certainly he could probably get a lot of jobs in Australia, but there's been reported interest from MLS, which I think there's been interest from Arnold's side in the MLS for quite a while, based on both things that I've heard and the fact that Graham Arnold has gone out of his way without prompting to praise the quality of the MLS a number of times in his tenure. I'm not saying it's Football Manager, come and get me, please, but it's worth taking note. And yeah, it is difficult to see how this gets any better for Graham Arnold than it does right now. Counteracting is that in that you get the sense that there is a genuine sense of affection between him and his players, particularly the Ollie Roo crop coming through. There might be a sense of he talks about, wanting to help these kids and millionaires and all of this sort of stuff. There could be a sense that he wants to come back and, see that next generation come in, create the Arnie generation, establish the Arnie generation after the golden generation. But it will be interesting to see, because as you said, Josh, the dynamics of the games moving forward, how much of the success in Doha was built surrounding us against the world. Nobody believes in us. Everybody expects you to get pumped. Australia didn't want you here. Australia didn't think you'd qualify. Australia didn't want you to qualify. Everybody's against you. Prove them wrong. Does that transfer over to when you're playing Oman or China or these smaller Asian sides in qualifying? No, it doesn't. I mean, it's already been definitively proven that it's been definitively disproven that Australia doesn't like the Socceroos. Australia loves the Socceroos. Look at the live sites. Australia loves the Socceroos. And one only needed to see the media coverage of this team when things were going well in Doha to show that the media loves the Socceroos as well. But the media, as their job is to call out crappy performances, which there were in qualifying. But you're not going to be able to play the underdog against Oman or Thailand or Myanmar or the Northern Mariana Islands. So the question is there going to be enough in the tank to get results and get good football without that significant mental and team building factors behind it? I don't know. Yeah. I don't think so.
I think the external factors about this World Cup are significant, and it's hard to replicate that sense Well, I mean, all the messaging that had been in the 4 years previous suddenly was true. Like, it was Australia against the world, and no one expected them to do anything. Suddenly, the siege mentality was actually true and relevant to the games that were being played, and it worked. But yeah, I do think a lot of those results were pretty context dependent, and we need to develop a plan with the ball. And if Graham Arnold can do that, all power to him. But I'd like to have him outline that to Football Australia before, they say Arnie's at the wheel, get the contract out, let him write anything he wants on it. The Socceroos are back, baby. I think this could backfire. So yeah, I'm just hoping that there's a reasonable process followed, and it's not just public opinion of Arnie is high. Let's get the contract out on the table and let's lock him in. I think that's a knee jerk reaction, as you say. There needs to be more of a comprehensive review. But Joey, before we go, any other topics you want to hit?
Should we
you just come back from Qatar? How sports washed are you feeling? We got Vince Rigari's response a little while ago.
Before we get to that, should we talk about the article that appeared in the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age? The secret behind Arnold's success in Qatar. Bradley C. expect to win. Dun dun dun. Bradley C. Stubbs, the coach whisperer.
We've heard it all before. He takes a victory lap every time the team wins, and then it's not as if anyone's holding him to account when you lose to Japan or Saudi Arabia. So I don't know. I don't really want to give it that much oxygen, to be honest.
Well, but what's wrong? I'm confused because Mike Conway, who's a mental coach, who motivational, psychological things, was on the grounds in Qatar. We saw him every day. He was there with the team. But Bradley C. Stubbs was involved as well. And I was very intrigued to see that story with Bradley. There was no comment from Arnie or anyone at Football Australia confirming this. It was just Bradley saying this, which I thought was interesting. Was Arnie cheating on Mike Conway with Bradley C. Stubbs behind his back? Or, was Arnie in his hotel room, in his room at the Aspire Academy screaming things into I don't know. I'm intrigued by this and what's real and what's not.
I mean, I don't know what the differences between the mentality coaches are. I do know that they weren't allowed to say Lionel Messi before the Argentina game.
The player,
the number 10. That was about it. So, some of these tricks and mind games, I guess they worked. You see it in the results, but I have a hard time believing that's the real reason the Socceroos made the round of 16. That's all. Come on. Football's got to be more complicated than that. It can't just be about belief.
Expect to win. Dun. No. So Qatar.
Before we go, Joey, give us your Qatar thoughts.
Like, World Cup shouldn't have been in Qatar.
Hot take.
Hot take. Looking at the World Cup, I think it's very easy when you're at a World Cup to get caught up in the hype, get caught up in how nice the people are, all of this other stuff, and think, oh, maybe my perceptions coming in were wrong, and all of that sort of stuff. My thinking surrounding this is, of course I was going to have a good time in Qatar. Of course I was going to see things that looked really great. Of course the people I was going to meet were going to be nice. I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure how many actual native Qataris I met. I imagine 99% of the people I met and spoke to that were lovely were migrant workers. But I think the differentiation for me is that when you're looking at these things, you need to separate the people from the state with these sort of things. The Qatari people that I've met, whether they were migrant workers, whatever, of course they were very nice. They were always going to be very nice to me. That's the entire point of holding these things. You show the visiting world one thing. But the Qatari state, we saw it recently with the death of a migrant worker outside the Saudi Arabian training base, how coldly and cruelly it was dismissed. And you look at the Qatari state, the government, it's an absolute monarchy, theocracy, suppresses information, suppresses freedom of information, suppresses the press, censors and controls the internet, restricts the rights of women, restricts the right of the LGBTQIA plus population in Qatar. I have no reason to believe that significant progress is going to be made on that heading out of the World Cup. I mean, we saw just how readily and willing they were to reverse the alcohol commitments they'd made 2 days out from the World Cup because the ruling family decreed it. I can't see, we heard from people before the World Cup concerns surrounding the backsliding of workers' rights in Qatar after the eyes of the world were off them. I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever. I haven't really seen or heard anything that would make me doubt that. The cold and cruel response to the death of the migrant worker outside the Saudi camp, reinforces that. And to be honest, I don't think this World Cup for Qatar was about improving their public image. I think it was a happy side effect, and I think they put some effort into it, no doubt. But I think this was more geopolitical for Qatar. You've got to bear in mind Qatar is a very small state surrounded by what has historically been a hostile power in Saudi Arabia. We saw just last year Saudi Arabia threatened to turn Qatar into an island using nuclear waste, and how they pirate in rather than pay Qatar for it. Just so geopolitically, I think in these circumstances, hosting a World Cup was very smart for Qatar. You can't exactly invade and annex a state that's about to hold the World Cup, can you?
And it got Mohammed bin Salman in a room with Infantino and the Qatari leadership. So,
and you look at other factors, I think there's been increases in the number of US personnel stationed in Qatar ever since the World Cup was brought in and more focus was put on the state, adds to their security. And the other factors involved in this, when a World Cup happens, it's not just fans that descend on a country, it's business leaders, it's heads of state, it's other movers and shakers that you can then negotiate with and further your own business interests. Look at what was announced in the middle of the World Cup. Whilst the German FA and the German national team were protesting, the German government was announcing a gas deal with Qatar, that they were going to buy hundreds of millions of dollars of natural gas from Qatar. That's what this is about. So geopolitically, I think the World Cup raising Qatar's profile and improving its public image was more a happy side effect than anything else. And because of that, it's very difficult to see any long-lasting human rights impacts coming out of this World Cup, which is a shame, but I keep thinking back. 4 years ago, people came out of Russia talking about how great it was and about how the concerns were overblown. Look at Russia now. So, an international pariah for invading Ukraine. So, I will eat crow if this is the start of a long and magical journey, but I struggle to see how it will be.
The World Cup also didn't go great for Brazilian democracy either for a while there. So
yeah, I mean, and like people said, got to respect their rights. Fine, I will. I was in Qatar. I didn't drink alcohol, even at the designated. I'm a teetotaler, so that's easy for me. But I didn't engage in gay sex. I didn't do any of the things that are. I didn't do drugs or any of these other things that are against Qatari culture. I respected Qatari culture whilst I was there, but I'm under no obligation to talk about how mad Qatar is, or mad in a good way, how awesome Qatar is, or recommends people go and spend their money there now. So yeah.
And just before we finish, Grant Weil, the US soccer journo, suffering a heart attack at a game during the Argentina-Netherlands penalty shootout. It's just really shocking news.
It's shocking and sad.
And really, I guess, traumatizing for the people who are there. I don't want to engage in any speculation.
I think it's unfair, and
No.
it's not fair to his memory, his family. It's also irresponsible,
Yeah.
I think, to do that. There will inevitably be an investigation, but like you only have to listen to his own blog. He was complaining of chest tightness, bronchitis, a sense of impending doom. So I think it's irresponsible. There's plenty that you can pop Qatar for without inventing conspiracy theories.
Yeah. So I just want to say he seemed like someone who fought the good fight in a lot of ways. Both for the recognition of soccer in the US and mainstream coverage of it, and very similar to the struggle for space here for the game in Australia. So I think we can all empathise with that, and also turning up with in a rainbow shirt to the USA Wales match was an incredibly brave thing to do. In solidarity with a family member as well. So,
got to say, no Qatari security ever popped on the fact that I was wearing rainbow shoes for half the World Cup. Maybe it was a good thing.
You snuck it past them, but just want to, I guess, extend our condolences to everybody who knew him, and to, I guess, the entire world of football media who crossed paths with him, because it's just a really, really tragic loss. Joey, before we go, what have you got coming out in terms of coverage that people should go and read? Because it's a busy week.
A couple of articles out today in ESPN. One detailing Anthony DiPietro's resignation from the APL board, which also features comments from Western United, Wellington Phoenix, a Melbourne City spokesperson who was at the Marco Tilio Matt Leckie press conference today, and quotes from the PFA. Also, I have a football-specific analysis of this decision to move the grand final that's in ESPN, effectively charting this as a long line of decisions not made on football merit and how that affects the system. Later in the week, I think I'm doing 3 games for AAP this weekend, match reports. So keep an eye on that.
Will you be covering the latest original style Melbourne post saying that they are going to boycott all finals games for the next 3 years if this deal goes ahead?
I'll probably leave that one to AAP, but I will be at the Melbourne Derby. And in the event that events happen in the 20th minute, I imagine there'll be a lot of coverage surrounding walkouts if they do indeed happen. Going to be interesting in the days and weeks ahead. It's always difficult with these sort of things when you're trying to do that journalism thing of trying to explain everybody's motivations and all that sort of stuff, and then one side just is so angry. But we'll get through it.
Yeah, busy week on the horizon. If people need a bit of a football pick-me-up, a bit of a reason to be optimistic about the game in this country for a change, go check out, I think it's on Lockie's Twitter, the African Nations Cup final on Sunday. Was an incredible game. South Sudan, incredible 2 games, in fact. South Sudan did the double, winning their first titles in the men's and women's here in Victoria. And the men's game in particular was a crazy match. 3-1 down in extra time. They came back to draw 3-3 and then won it on penalties. And the scenes afterwards, the celebrations, the pitch invasion was just absolute magic. And Lockie Flanagan and Pakua Frimpong, 2 of our favourites here on TNC, did a marvellous job of calling the action on the live stream over on the Football Empowerment Facebook page. If you want to take a look at that one, that's one of my favourite events on the football calendar.
Also, just realised what we also need to do quickly. There's also, we need to do a fantasy update.
Oh God! All right.
All right.
While I get the fantasy league up, do you want to tell the people about the award?
Yes, I am nominated for an award. Australian Sports Commission, is that what it's called? Their media awards, the project that myself and Jamie Van Leeuwen from ESPN did, detailing the story of the Afghan women's national team, the short film that we did in the article, that's been nominated for an award. So is that publicly voted? Can I harness the masses and get them to
I
vote
don't
for
know,
us.
Joey. You tell me. You tell me about the prizes that you've won.
I don't know. We've also been nominated for a well, not nominated. We've also been accepted into an Italian short film festival, which is a bit of a bother for Jamie because he's got to submit the video with Italian subtitles and he doesn't speak Italian. And Google Translate's not being very helpful. But yeah, it's really awesome to see the recognition for this story. More so just because these girls are so amazing and more people should know about who they are and what they've accomplished and their love of the game. So if you haven't seen it, it's still my pinned tweet. Actually, the article is still my pinned tweet and the short film is a reply to that. So if you haven't seen it, it's there. And yeah, if you liked it, feel free to share it. But fantasy.
Yes, fantasy. TNC does fantasy in the Liga men's. Well, I went down. No surprise here. Hang on, I've brought up the wrong league here. But yes, my miserable run continues. I'm down in 16th place with a thumping loss to Jason Pine's Tower Pine. Joey, how did you fare on the weekend? You had a narrow win at the top of the table against.
I had a narrow win.
Razor Hermanos.
Yeah, I inflicted just the second defeat of league leader Alexander Pavlidis' season by a narrow 73-70 margin to go. I think I've now gone. I'm now equal first, 5 wins and 2 losses. But there's a few teams on 5 wins and 2 losses. I'll go through the entire league's results. So Lockie Flanagan's Demigods defeated. This is incredibly narrow. Defeated Vince Regari's Vince Milan by a single point, 95-94. Much more comfortable for Nick Dabano's Alino's Bridge 11. Comfortable win over Taron Hedo's I Will Forget, 101-62. Chiefs of Staff FC defeating Razor Hermano 73-70. One of the randoms defeating Demir Kulash's Daddy Kuols 86-70. Another one of the randoms going down to one of the randoms 89-68. Listen here, F faces. Still don't know what that is a reference to, what that gag is. Mike Wise defeating one of the randoms 75-46. Teo defeating Nick Stoll narrowly 70-68.
Stoll still
without a win,
7 for the season on rock bottom on the table.
Maybe that's why he left early because he wanted to get out of here before we talked about the results. Grayscale FC picking up a win, 82-67 over Ben Smith's My Castro Romance, also without a win on the season. Ben Smith, 1 draw and 6 losses for Ben. Josh Parrish's FC Smoothbrain. Well, Josh, yeah, as you said, you got hammered, 94-51.
Got hammered by Piney.
And then Anna Harrington's Name Redacted, defeated by 10 points against Philip Rollo's Tasman United, who are 3rd on the table. So in this heated rivalry between Philip Rollo and Stoll, at fantasy at least, Rollo's got Stoll in the mud.
He does. And I think, Bozid Krayev's form has got something to do with that. But yeah, there's about a 7-way tie at the top of the table at the moment, so no clear winner. Over in the women's, George Rajic defeating Kat Haddad 108-102 in a thrilling contest. Whose My Name is Jeff? Nicholas someone. That might be random.
No, there's no randoms in this league. So it's,
okay.
It's Nick Dabano, I believe.
Oh, it's Dabano. Dabano losing in a high-scoring game to Teo's team. I had one of my highest scores of the season and still lost to Damir Kulash's Hollywood Homes. Teresa Polias losing by 14 points to Lockie Flanagan's Grove Street. Bakua's Vibes Only, living up to the name, going down to Brianna Goodchild's North Sydney Queens. Joey, your team, Gory Bomb, going down to Grayscale FC relatively comfortably. Taryn's I Will Not Forget.
I scored 112 and still got beaten handily. Jesus.
Doesn't it hurt? Grayscale on fire at the moment. Taryn's I Will Not Forget. 25-point loss to Philip Rollo's Tasman United.
Maybe she did forget.
And 30-point defeat for Campbell Johnson. So let's look at the table. Lockie Flanagan on top with 4 wins from 4. And then there's about a 3-way tie for second place between Georgia Rajic, Grace Gill, and Brianna Goodchild. I am struggling down in 13th place. Joey's in 10th. We're both in mud this week in the women's, unfortunately. But we'll keep you posted on the Fantasy League and in the Public League.
Yeah, I've got it up here now. Top place is #GotWood from Cian. I'm assuming that's a Patrick Wood reference. Total score 774. Scored 111 points over the weekends, which took him over second place Clarkie's 11 from Jamie. Somebody Nifty FC. Teo keeps asking who that is. In third place, Neil Nifty FC 763. Scored 120 on the weekend. The Yengi Bus with Reese in fourth place on 750. And then Future FC Jack 743 points, having scored 106. So I'm just
Can
going
I
to check
also
out.
just add that Cian's Got Wood is ranked 8th overall, I think,
Yes.
in the entirety of A-Liga
The
men's
top-
fantasy.
The top 5 in our public league is ranked 8th overall, 10th overall, 15th overall, 25th overall, and 35th overall. It is ridiculous.
It is stupid, and that's why we're doing so badly in it, because the quality is just too high, unfortunately. But I think we'll leave it there on TNC for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Stoll. Thank you, Joey. And we will be back, I think, very soon, because we've got to do some reaction pods with the World Cup games and, preview for the final. And there's obviously A-League coming up this weekend, which will be eventful to say the least.
And just remember, everybody, this grand final thing, Lockie Flanagan's fault.
Send all complaints to Lockie Flanagan. Leave Nick Tabano out of this. Thanks and success, everybody.
Thanks.